thing is why are we doing it and what's it for, and why would you want a market strategy in the first place? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to go about it and why you might think it's worth spending time building a market strategy. A couple of things to think about. There's lots of academic stuff about marketing strategy and awful tools with complicated names like Porter's 7 forces and Boston matrices and all sorts of things. And I think one of the things I can probably help with in this short presentation is how to clear out all the difficult stuff and get to the things that really matter, that are going to make a big difference to you and your business. And I think the other point I would make is that I don't think this is something you should do in isolation. I think if you can involve as many parts of your business as possible, new people who've joined your business recently, yourself, the business owners and people who drive the business, and even if you can, a customer or two, because they'll really enrich the process. My recommendation would be to start with setting some broad goals, and this is about where you want to take your business and what you want to achieve. But I think setting these goals has got to be done carefully, again involving lots of people if you can, and getting views and opinions. But the other key thing is they have to be SMART goals. SMART's quite a useful acronym to help you get those goals working effectively for you. So S would start SMART, obviously, and that stands for specific. And that means making sure that the goals are really relating to you and your business and what you want to achieve, so they're very specific to you. Secondly, they've got to be M for measurable. In other words, they have to have a metric associated with them so that you'll know when you've achieved it. So it might be a market share percentage, or it might be a turnover growth, or it might be a number of employees. It's kind of up to you. You might have several of them, but you just have to have those measures in the mix. The third thing is A for achievable, and I think this is acutely important because it has to be a set of goals which you know that you can achieve. And if you're too ambitious and you're never going to reach those goals, it becomes very disheartening very quickly, not only for you but for anybody working around you. Fourthly, R for relevant. They have to be highly relevant to your business, and that means they have to deliver something specific to you. So that might mean that you need to build your business into a particular market channel, for example, and that would be very relevant to you and your business. And finally, they have to be T for time specific. In other words, when you've decided where you want to go with the business, give yourself some timescales and review positions in the process so that you've got a goal that you know when you've met it, and so do all your team and all your employees. I would start thinking about the market that you're operating in. So in other words, on the landscape of the market, which segments are you going to focus on? And it's important to decide which those segments are and to focus carefully to stop yourself run ragged with 24 different opportunities on the same day and not knowing which one to take. So the way to start this is, if you can, get some data about how big those markets are, because it's good to know whether you're going to operate in a segment which is potentially huge and you're going to be a very small fish in that segment, or whether actually you're going to go for quite a niche segment and aim to be a very big player in that small segment. So if you can get some data about how big the market is, that's a good place to start. I would then look at, well, which of those segments are growing? Is it better to be in a segment which has got lots of growth, or is it better to focus on a segment which is static or maybe even declining? And I think it's fairly obvious it's better to be in a growth segment, much more opportunity. Who's competing with you in this segment that you choose? Or maybe there are 2 or 3 segments, but who are the competitors in there? Are there some really big national companies that are very difficult to compete with? Or can you find market segments where the big national companies actually aren't focusing because maybe it's too small for them, or it's too geographically isolated, whatever those situations are. And then what's the price landscape in the segment that you choose? Is it a really price competitive area, and are you going to therefore have your margins squeezed all the time? Or can you find segments where people are, and the customer is perhaps a little bit less price sensitive? And then finally, what's the route to market? How do you reach those customers? If you're selling a product, which channels, which retailers does it go through? And is that a channel that you really understand and know? Or if you're a service provider, what's that channel? What does it look like? And who are the people operating in it? And do you know them well? And if you go through that operation, you can quite often find a number of segments which bubble to the top and start to look more attractive for you. And then you can start to set your market strategy to focus on those segments and make sure that everything you do has those segments at the top, at front of mind, because it will improve your chances of success. And I always think that, particularly if you're selling to the end consumer, it's good to try and draw up a profile of what your typical consumer looks like. And you can be quite creative with it. And you might want to think about, well, let's see if we can draw a pen portrait of this person. What newspaper do they read? What car do they drive? Have they got children? Have they got pets? What hobbies do they do? And by drawing that pen portrait, you can start to focus your activities, your business and marketing activities, really on those very specific consumers. And if you tune into what they're likely to want and what's likely to motivate them, then your marketing process will be more successful.
You talk about the pen portrait of the consumers, and you said more so perhaps that. But do you think there's a value for that for the if you're a business to business?
Yeah, I think so. It's a little bit more difficult to do, and there's going to be less of them. Let's face it. If you're a business to business provider, then there aren't millions of customers. There's probably tens or hundreds of customers. So actually, you're more likely to be drawing a picture of an actual customer rather than just a pen portrait of the customer. But it's still good to think about the characteristics of that customer and how they behave and what motivates them. And actually, in a customer, there'll be some specific people and individuals that you've probably got to motivate and engage with. So maybe it's them you should think about. What's going to make their life easier? What's going to make you the supplier of choice? Can you remove some of their trials, tribulations and barriers of the day in your approach? So I think the next thing to do is think about where are we now. That's a really good way of thinking about it. Where is your business, what's the status of your business today versus your goals and the market you've chosen to work in, and therefore what do we need to do to exploit those markets? And again, without getting into a very complicated tool, there's a few useful checklists that you can adopt when you want to do the where are we now, or what I'd call a situation analysis. What is the status quo? And these all begin with C, conveniently, so they're easy to remember. So C for company, the first thing to think about is, well, what sort of company are you? Are you very dynamic? Are you a traditional company? Think about your company characteristics and the culture in your company, because that's going to have an impact on the way you approach the market strategy process. The second C is the customers, and we've already talked a little bit about customer profiles, and this is also important when you look at your situation analysis. How many customers are there? How easy are they to reach? Where are they? And what are their habits and their their approaches? Because again, we might find some customers are much more easy to get to than others. The next C is competitors. Who's already operating in your area, the market segment you've chosen, and what are their features? What sort of a business are they? They're much bigger than you, much smaller than you. Are they going to be difficult to compete with? Collaborators, these are the people that you need around you. They're probably not part of your business, but they might be your suppliers and service providers. There might be a wholesaler that takes your product to market. There might be a sales agent. But you need to talk to all these people to make sure that they all fit into your strategy plan as well. And finally, the final C is the climate. And I don't really mean the weather, although funny enough it could mean weather if you're in a product or a service which relies on working outside, for example. But climate, really is about what's going on in the general marketplace, not specific to your market. Sometimes called a pest analysis, which stands for political, economic, social and technological status. So for example, if you are in a highly regulated industry, what are the laws that are going to come in to impact on your business over the next few years? If you're in soft drinks, what's going to happen to to people's attitude towards sugar in their diet? Those are just two very specific examples that you need to think about in your market strategy planning, because it might make you change direction.
On those, I think there were 5 C's there that you listed out. How it takes, in your experience in the businesses that you've worked with over the years, do some businesses struggle to be honest in their own appraisal of themselves? I mean, you have to be able to look at yourself quite realistically if this is going to work. Do businesses struggle with that?
Yes, particularly businesses that are well established and family businesses that have been built up through long experience, and there's a sense that, well, we've always done it this way and we know ourselves very well. And that's why going right back to the beginning of this process when we talked about setting the goals. I think it's a good idea to have some new employees that have joined you very recently, or some customers that you know very well, and don't be tempted just to have the senior management in the process. Definitely go down the organisation and get people from all levels involved in this process, and then be prepared to listen to them, because they'll have some real honest feedback that maybe it's, maybe not always nice to hear, but some of it's really, really helpful. Well, I think this is a good point to stop and take stock of where you've got to, and do this with a thing called a SWOT analysis. And SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Hopefully through the process we've already been through, you will now understand your business strengths very clearly. These are things which you obviously, in your chosen market, with your chosen customers, that you do well. And be careful, because that means it's perception's quite often very important here. It's also the things that your customers think you do well, not the things that you think you do well, which might be different. And equally with weaknesses. Weaknesses are all about you. What are your weaknesses? Ask people. Make sure you've collected them and you've written them down clearly and you know what they are. Some of them you may decide that you're never going to address, or you're going to leave to the bottom of the importance list or the priority list, but some of them will be critical, and again your customers and your employees will, and by the way your competitors too, I'm sure, will help you identify those. Then opportunities, this is about what's going on out there in the marketplace. So this is about the things that you've identified in terms of market segments that are growing or large or not well serviced by the competitors, or the pricing's wrong, or geographical areas where your competitors don't perform well. These are all of those opportunities and specific things that provide an opportunity for you and your business to grow and thrive. And then finally the threats. Those are the things on the outside that could prevent you from reaching your goals. And they might be things that you identify through the pest analysis, for example. It might be a new law that's going to come in and make your trading in a particular segment very difficult. That would be a big threat. It might be a big multinational competitor launching, if you're an estate agent, for example, launching into your region. Or acquiring one of your competitors and investing heavily. So you need to understand where those threats are, because those will also potentially impact on where you go with your market strategy. I think if you've been through this process and you've involved all the people we've talked about and you've considered all those aspects, then I think you're ready to kind of write your plan now. And a plan can be, a big fat thick document, or actually it could be a short PowerPoint presentation. The key thing is who's the audience for the plan, how many people in the business need to adopt and embrace the plan and work with it, and how often you're going to go back and review it and sit down as a team. So don't make this too long and too complicated. But again, because I like kind of the quick ways and easy ways of remembering things, I use another kind of letter, so this is now the P's. We're going to do, it used to be the 4 P's in marketing, but it's kind of become 5, 6, 7, you can have as many P's as you like, but the ones I think are important, and this is about listing what you're going to do under each of these headings in the light of everything you've learned so far. And the first one is product, or it could be service if you're a service provider. And that's about understanding exactly what your product or service should look like. You may need to make some changes and tweaks to it to meet those opportunities that you have identified and capitalise on those strengths that we also identified earlier on. You might have to think about the range of products as well, because to meet your customer needs you may find you've got gaps or you've got too many products. So P, the first P, product, is all about getting your product right for that market. Then we have P for proposition, and proposition is probably a sort of long and fancy way of talking about what you might conventionally speak about market or marketing, or if you like, brand. In other words, what do people understand about you and your business when they see you and your product or your salesperson? What is your proposition? What makes you different? How do you stand out from the crowd? What differentiates you? And you might manifest that in a brand logo, or you might manifest it in a particular way that your team answer the phone. You might manifest it in, it might appear in the way your literature is prepared. It's all about the proposition that you offer your customer. Then a really important one is price. Where are you going to where are you going to position yourself on the price graph? Are you going to be high quality, high price, mid price point? And again, hopefully through the process we've been through in analysing the market situation, you'll have decided your price points along the way. Next one is place, and that's all about where are you going to present your offer. And again, it might be in a retail channel, or it might be through a wholesaler, or it might be through an agent or distributor. How are you going to reach your customer? And then finally, promotion, and this is about your advertising and your messaging to your customers, the public relations activity, the advertising, the branding. How are you going to present yourself to the customers? So if your plan contains all of those key points, and you've been through the process of considering all of the data along the way, I think you have quite a strong, succinct and targeted market strategy plan to take your business forward.
One of the things that sort of struck me is you've been saying a lot of this, and when you were talking about product there, and you may need to tweak it or adjust it, or you may need to develop new products. I get a sense that as the business owner, you have to be really open to change in all of this at every step of the way. Any preconceived ideas you've got, you have to park.
Yeah, I think if you don't want your business to change, there's no point in starting the market strategy process in the first place, because what the market strategy process is designed to do is mould you and your business to meet and hopefully exceed the expectations of your customers. And so understanding what's going on out there in the marketplace, and honing your business to exceed their expectations and make you the best choice supplier is going to mean you have to change lots of things along the way. Some of them might be quite small, some of them might be absolutely major, but there's definitely going to be change, otherwise there's no point in going through the process.
How does that, how do you, I mean, you must have come across entrepreneurs who set up their own businesses, and they've had a brilliant idea, and you hear all these stories of people kept telling me to do this, that or the other, but I knew what I believed in and I was passionate about it, and I just kept going, and now I'm a multi-trillionaire or something. How, that happens to a tiny minority. How do you navigate that?
Well, I think that's a good question insofar as I don't often meet people who are so dogmatic that they don't want to listen to feedback and reason. And I think that, yes, there will occasionally be the maverick who is very successful going off on his own route. But I think those people are few and far between. They're very famous when they do it, because they tend to be very successful, and they tend to be very good at shouting about it as well. But I think for most of us mere mortals who don't have that vision and that entrepreneurial luck, it's better to go through an ordered, logical process. And yes, that can be hard for somebody who's been working in a business for a long time and has had a kind of consistent approach to it. But generally speaking, if you hold the mirror up to people long enough, they kind of get it. Well, perhaps slightly depressingly, I'd now go back to the beginning and start again. Of course, what I'm saying is this needs to be a cyclical process, and you've probably put some when you set your goals. In the time box, you probably had some routine review points. It might be monthly, it might be annually, but each time I would then go back through this loop and check that nothing has radically changed. It might mean, you might move your goals from time to time. Something might happen in the marketplace that means you go, oh, actually, we're going to change our direction very slightly or radically. But the key is to keep going around the cycle. You can't write a market strategy and put it in a drawer and forget about it. Keep it out on the desk. Keep it in people's personal objectives. If you can write objectives for your team that are pulling pieces of your strategy out and dropping them into personal objectives, then everybody's pulling in the same direction. That's fantastic. So definitely keep going around the cycle.
That sounds like integrate it as part of the culture within the organisation as well, that actually the internal communication of the marketing strategy is quite a fundamental part.
Yeah, it is. I think, there are businesses that take that market strategy planning and the goal setting part and just distill it right down to some very clean, short, visionary statements. And you'll go into businesses where the business vision is drawn up on the wall. You can do that. Or you can just simply have a page or a couple of pages that everybody has in their, has on their desk, in their drawer, and you look at it and talk about it on a routine basis. Have a weekly meeting where you just quickly, go back to the vision and go, how are we doing against our goals? Set them as part of people's business objectives or personal objectives, so that everybody kind of, starts to adopt it and understand. And I think a team of people working towards a common goal are always much more effective than a team of people all working to their own individual goals. So integrating your business goals with people's individual goals is really powerful.
If there's one thing that you really think a business owner should take away from this in terms of their, developing their marketing strategy, what do you think that should be?
Don't do it on your own. Get other people involved. Get a good strategy consultant or a support person from outside the business if you can. If you can't, use your team of people you've got inside the business. Remember those employees that have just joined you, they're probably really valuable. And if you can get a customer to come and help you, even better.